Welcome to For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times, sponsored by MSA Safety. In this series, we bring you sessions from the Emergency Services Show and the Emergency Tech Show 2025. As more police forces start to use live facial recognition technology, we hear from two forces who are early in their plans for implementation. Andrew Hendry from Police Scotland and Leanne Moorehouse from Devon and Cornwall Police join Rich Preston in this episode to talk about the considerations, practicalities and ethics behind future deployment.
If I can start by asking actually just where each force is to begin with. If I can start with you, Andrew, because there was discussion about using live facial recognition when President Trump visited Turnberry and the Many Estate recently, but it didn't happen, did it?
No, I mean, there was certainly a lot of discussion about that, but again, we're very early in our journey. We are currently in consultation, really, stage in regards to technology. We've developed a rights-based pathway process around innovative technologies like that, which makes sure we're transparent. So we're very early in the journey currently. We're still in that kind of consultation engagement phase.
How about Devon and Cornwall?
Yeah, so very similar actually. Devon and Cornwall, we've been looking at it as a capability for about the last 12 months. Again, we've started off our community consultation, putting feelers out to our communities and our public, and then also our staff as well, and just getting some opinions around how people want to kind of shape our policies moving forward.
So you mentioned two key groups there, the public and the staff. Do they have completely opposing views on this? What do the cops say, first of all?
From what I've kind of come across, our police officers are really pro for this kind of technology. I think the benefits for policing speak for themselves. The benefits for productivity in policing as well. What we're asking live facial recognition to do is to do what a police officer would do in their normal day-to-day job, which is identify people that are of interest to the police. So the overwhelming response from our police officers have been, we want this technology and we're ready to embrace it to make their own lives easier.
How about in Police Scotland?
I think similar. I think LFR is a tool at the end of the day, and I think it makes lives easier. It makes better outcomes, and I think fundamentally it's another technological advancement that the organisation, can and should embrace.
So just in case people have not followed the news around live facial recognition technology, and the key word there is live, how does it work? What does the system actually do?
So the live facial recognition technology is using a live camera feed. So that's where the word live comes from. And the software within those cameras identifies faces that are walking through that live camera feed. And it matches them against a predetermined watch list. And then it generates an alert. So if a person walking through a live camera feed is on that watch list, it generates an alert that gets sent to an operator to then pass to a police officer to decide what to do with that alert.
You said a watch list. Is that just people who are wanted for serious crimes, warrants, or is it, so-and-so committed a small theft by shoplifting 12 months ago?
No, so the watch lists are specific to every deployment. So every deployment will have their own specific watch list. For example, there could be an initiative on knife crime, an initiative on VOG, an initiative on retail crime, and that watch list will be specific for that deployment and will feature persons of interest for that specific deployment.
Andrew, can you talk us through the kit? What's actually involved in live facial recognition technology?
Yeah, so as Leanne touched on, you've got your camera equipment, which can be mounted in a fixed position, or it can be mounted in a mobile van, for example. The systems tend to be isolated, so you don't, there's different ways of doing it. Obviously, you could do it any which way, but the standard tends to be equipment mounted in a van, which is isolated from any such external networks. That is, as Leanne said, is fed a list of faces to look for, and that's based on whatever the topic is, for want of a better term, or targets are at that time. That then, would obviously check against that list. Officers outside of the van would tend to have mobile devices, which would flag to them that somebody had been detected, and that allows them to approach that individual and then start that interaction.
Of course, one of the key arguments is if someone wants to hide, all they need to do is put on a face mask or a baseball cap and you've defeated several £100,000 worth of equipment.
Yeah, I mean, there's always ways, but I would say that, you know, from the trials that have been happening in other forces that I've observed, not only is the technology able to sometimes get around that, but also certain individuals, you know, maybe aren't necessarily that proactive, shall we say.
Yeah. So, Leanne, you're a serving police officer, you're a sergeant in Devon and Cornwall. When you're out in the community and this topic of conversation comes up, what do people say to you?
So people have their concerns, quite rightly, as kind of reported in the media in relation to accuracy, in relation to bias, racial bias, gender bias. And in Devon and Cornwall, we've started a series of public engagements. And we go into these public engagements with all the information that we have and lay it on the table. And we start by saying, how do you think we use facial recognition technology to begin with? And actually, most of the public will go, well, we think you use it all the time for this, for terrorists. We go, well, actually, we don't. And then we go into the different types of facial recognition. We have the live, but then we also have retrospective facial recognition, which we've used in policing for many, many years. So we go and we describe the different types, break it down, we describe how it works, we give some reassurances around the data, around the privacy, retention, and we just kind of try and dispel some myths straight away. So we give them kind of all the information, and we're quite open and say, look, we're exploring this just as much as you are. We'd like you to be with us, to kind of be with us to explore it. And once you kind of lay all that information out, we've found that the public are actually quite reassured by some of the kind of statistics and testing that's been done nationally. And there's still questions around bias and around how you're going to use it. Does it keep hold of my images? Are you building a database? And they're quite, you know, we can answer those because no, we're not keeping data. No, we're not retaining it. No, we're not building a database. So I think a lot of the misconceptions is possibly not understanding how it works. And actually, I've been pleasantly surprised at the level of positive engagement and enthusiasm from our communities. And the next step now is, well, actually, we'd like to see this in action. It's all very well explaining it. And I'm sure we're at the same stage where we're talking about it. And I'm like, I'd love to just show it to you because that will answer a lot of your questions. So we're at that stage now where we're looking at demoing the facial recognition kind of software for people to come in a purely engagement environment, not operationally live, so they can see exactly how it works.
So you're taking the van into the middle of Plymouth and you're letting people come along and see how it...
Not quite yet. That's possibly a few steps away yet. But that is our intention. Come and have a look. Maybe do a Devon and Cornwall tour. Right. It's quite a large area. I might be doing that for a while. But that is our full intention. Drive around, doors open, come and have a look, ask us all the questions.
Meanwhile, at the other end of the country, how are you trying to engage communities here?
So we are, you know, as I touched on before, we've got various mechanisms now, particularly around innovative technologies. You know, as you can appreciate, technology is always ahead of legislation. It's always ahead of what is the norm. And that's something that we've embraced, you know, full transparency with the public, with the staff, with officers, and really tried to kind of demystify, to a certain extent, both the technical aspects of it, but also the rights-based pathway and the ethics. We really prioritise that aspect of all our technology deployments, because fundamentally that's how we design it, to make sure it's proportionate, to make sure it's effective. Something that I've tried to build into our digital strategy, etc., is the idea around, rather than the technology itself, do it based on the use case of it. You know, technology can be used for many different things, and I think the ethics and the rights considerations around that have to match the use case rather than the technology necessarily. So, you know, as we touched on before, you know, live facial recognition versus after the fact, you know, they're very different. You know, searching an image for when a red bag appeared in a train station, for example, that could be done by a number of officers over a number of hours. And, you know, the ethics around that are very different compared to live scanning a group of people outside a stadium. So we very much try to scope and I suppose scale our considerations based on that use case.
Can you go into a bit more detail on that? Because I'm curious as to where that tipping point lies between, the need to have the quote unquote need to have a live facial recognition system in, say, Stirling city centre on a regular Saturday afternoon versus at Heathrow Airport on the busiest travel day of the year. Where do you find that tipping point?
I would say it's all based on threat, risk and harm. It's all based on, proportionality. Again, that will be our operational policing decision around the particular use case. But when it comes to the consideration around the ethics of rights, etc., it is the same process over and over again. You will be checking the same things around that before you go in and engage further. I think it's all about proportionality and obviously impact and benefit.
Who makes that decision?
That's an operational officer, an operational policing decision around that threat, risk and harm. But they're supported with a rights-based pathway and ethics consideration board. We also have external panels with professional reference groups. There's various mechanisms in place to make sure that that's a fully rounded conversation.
You mentioned earlier the word legislation, the fact that technology always moves quicker than the lawmakers do. How do you, as a chief digital officer, deal with trying to implement or work with a piece of kit that is not legislated for you? You're kind of writing your own rule book here.
Yes and no. I mean, at the end of the day, I think having the benefit from the technical understanding of it, you're also still an individual who cares about their privacy, cares about their rights. So I think the digital team certainly, and I think a lot of the forces, including Police Scotland, they are very mindful of that. They want to implement something which has been thought through, designed, etc. So we very much build that into our implementation. So privacy by design, ethics, right-based pathway, etc. It's all part of our standard transformation consideration. So it really doesn't matter what it is. It goes through some level of assessment to make sure that, something doesn't end up getting missed.
Yeah. Leanne, can you talk to us a bit more about the accusations of bias in the system and, frankly, that the technology at the moment is better at picking up some people than others?
Yeah, so kind of back many years ago, when live facial recognition was first used in this country, there was it suffered from kind of headlines of racial bias, and where the technology, and this was 2017, so this was many years ago in technological terms. Since then, the technology has improved massively, absolutely beyond anything kind of possible. And for policing, we've learnt through that journey as well that we need to scrutinise our suppliers. We need to, not just the suppliers, but the technology within them. In policing, we're sold a lot of AI products. We don't quite know what the AI bit is in the middle, but now I think we're getting better at questioning. Hang on, what is the process within that, and what testing have you done? So moving forward to kind of today. The current suppliers that are used for live facial recognition have undergone vigorous independent testing, both through NIST and the NPL, and that's been at their own cost and expense. Other independent academics are also doing research, and this is all done in conjunction with the police forces, so it's all kind of done together. And the NPL testing has determined that at the current setting used by UK policing, there's no statistical significant racial bias within the systems used. So it's not saying there is none, but it's saying there's not a statistical significant amount, which is really reassuring for us as police to go out and say, look, we're trying as much as we can to kind of eliminate as much of that bias as possible. We are aware that there will be an element of bias. So actually one of my kind of key kind of important aspects to think about is the staff that are around deployment, and actually kind of making sure that we're using the right terminology and we're not saying that the technology has made a decision to speak to you, because it hasn't. It's always the police officer's decision to speak to someone. And actually that's quite a powerful statement to make to our communities, to say, if we're going to go ahead with this, we're going to use it with no statistical racial bias, and that seems to kind of put a lot of people's minds at rest.
Can I ask you to go into a bit more detail there? Because I live in London, I've walked past facial recognition vans that the Met use, and it does make you kind of stop and feel a bit uneasy first. But as you said, it's ultimately a police officer, a human,
Yes.
coming to have that interaction. Can you talk to us about that relationship?
Yeah, so and like I said, it's something I've picked up on and something I'm quite eager to kind of express is that the alert from the camera goes to someone in the van, goes to an officer on the ground. It could be someone like me, and they will get the image of the person so they can identify them, and any very kind of minimal information, a name and possibly any warning markers. That's for our own officer safety, and the reason why they're on that watch list. It's a bit like, I liken it a little bit to ANPR. So where we identify a vehicle, actually we have the decision whether we stop it, whether we stop and go, oh, yeah, you've got insurance, have a lovely day, be on your way, or, oh, you know, you're under arrest for something else. It goes across all that scope. So it's that engagement officer that is outside that van that is really important because they're going to be making the very first, good morning, good afternoon, can I just speak to you for a minute? We call it procedural justice in policing. It's how people feel they've been dealt with, how they feel they've been treated and spoken to fairly. So yeah, that's why I'm conscious that the officers and staff around that van need to just be as kind of informal about it as possible. They're the ones making the decision, not the technology. The technology has alerted us to the fact that we've said we want you to tell us if this person walks near us. Mm-hmm. The onus is then on the officer to decide how that engagement proceeds. And from that will be down to that copper's instinct as to how that engagement goes.
Yeah. I'm sure you will both have been watching with a keen eye how the Metropolitan Police has been using this at events like Notting Hill Carnival. There have been criticisms, but the Met Police also have been trumpeting the number of positive arrests and matches that they've had out of it. I'm not asking you to critique another force's work, but from what you're seeing, do you find it encouraging or concerning? If I can begin with you, Andrew.
I think encouraging overall. I think with a lot of these things, those who go first, find the speed bumps. And I think various forces have made various movements in this space. And, certainly Police Scotland's got the benefit of learning from that. I think from what I've seen and heard, and we've had multiple engagement with the forces that already have it, I think it's demonstrating that real responsibility and attention around how this technology could be used ethically and safely. But obviously there's always room for improvement, there's always lessons to be learned, and I think the trick is being open to do that, which I think from what I've seen from the Met, they are doing that. So
Leanne?
Yeah, and like Andrew said, we're doing all our learning from the forces, South Wales, the Met, that are kind of guiding us along the way because they've been in this space for many, many years. And like Andrew said, we can learn their lessons. However, we do have, Devon and Cornwall has a very different community to the centre of London, as Scotland will have a different community again. So though we will take those lessons, we need to take them and shape them to our own communities, which is why the consultation part for our own people in Cornwall who might not have heard of live facial recognition technology. So we may take a slightly different tactic in relation to that. Other than that, I'm really impressed with the progress that the Met and South Wales do on a weekly basis in deploying it.
You talk about those different communities there. Is there a sense, and you touched on the threat, risk and harm analysis earlier, that this is just overkill, frankly, for Devon and Cornwall, for much of Police Scotland's patch, unless you've got Mr. Trump out playing a round of golf? Is this really necessary?
I mean, personally, I think it just goes back to being a tool. If you look at the equipment, the kind of capability that a police officer and staff has access to over the years, I would hope to think that's improving. Again, I'm not an operational officer, so I'll be careful here, but when I look at muster room briefings, when officers have been shown pictures of people missing, wanted, etc., the benefit of this technology would be that you're not relying on that memory. You're actually allowing them to then, if it's been deployed, obviously, it's basically taking the kind of overhead of that away from them. And as I said, if you look at other industries or other sectors like NHS, health, etc., advanced technologies are being used for good. Scanning X-rays, for example, for concerning things. I don't see that being any different in policing. Obviously, there is ethical, privacy, etc., and all that has to be taken care of. But I think we really have to emphasise the positive impact it will make on what is a difficult job. Again, some of the technologies that are out there, age is no barrier. You know, you can have a missing person image of somebody, and 5 years later, facial recognition can actually detect that person. So again, used properly, I think it can deliver a lot of good.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because a lot of the conversation around live facial recognition is around searching people for weapons, drugs, there's warrants, etc. But actually, as you say, you can use it for vulnerable, missing people to try and find these folks who've gone AWOL.
And I think that's the thing about, you know, making sure, I think the responsibility also sits with us to actually push those benefits and actually demonstrate why it is of interest. You know, people will go through their daily lives going through live facial recognition all the time and don't realise it. You know, retail environments, you know, conference centres potentially, all things like that. You know, it's all being used for different things. And I think it's really important that we start to normalise that, as well as demonstrating a responsibility around it.
Yeah, we're going to come to questions in a moment, so do keep them in mind if you have them. When Police Scotland discussed using this for Mr. Trump's visit, I think there was 14 organisations, you know, Amnesty International, you know, privacy groups, etc., expressed their displeasure with that. Leanne, you've explained how you talk to people on a one-on-one, face-to-face basis. How do you have that kind of bigger picture conversation when it's these advocacy groups who are really dead set against this?
I kind of bring it back to our policing purpose, which is to protect life, to detect crime, apprehend offenders, protect the vulnerable. And Andrew's made a really good point. One of our big events we are looking at in Devon and Cornwall attracts a young, vulnerable crowd. Therefore, why wouldn't we want to protect those people attending that event with a dedicated watch list for that? So that's my kind of encouragement to them is actually as a police officer, this is my purpose. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I can tell you now, a camera with live facial recognition technology can recognise someone much better than I can as a tired officer on a shift that was given a piece of paper with someone's face on at 7 a.m. and told to look out for them until 6 p.m. that evening. Yeah. I'd be much more confident having a system go, oh, I think this is it, than me going, is it them? I'm not sure. And then you're not approaching that person with a degree of confidence then. You go, oh, well, I think I might need to speak to you. And then that's not really giving the best impression. So yeah, that would be my response.
Andrew, it would be remiss of me to not ask this. How much does it cost?
Depends what you buy. I think, again, that's all part of the business case around this is, you know, again, and there has to be a risk-reward aspect to that. And again, I think, you know, particularly in the mobile deployments examples, you're able to probably be more cost-effective on that basis because you can deploy it as and when you need to. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't give you a number on the basis, depends how you design the system. But I would say that it's not, you know, technology at the heart of this isn't as advanced as we think it is. You know, it's relatively mainstream now. So, you know, I don't see this as being cutting edge anymore. I just think we are slightly behind the curve as a sector in that space.
So where is it going then? You talk about policing being behind the curve of where the sector is. Where do you see policing's journey on this going?
In relation to LFR particularly? Or
in relation to the kit and what it can do and how it's used?
Yeah, I think, as I said, you know, from proper design and consideration, you can then start to find use cases. And I think, you know, seeing's believing. I think getting people to see it and understand what it is, and it's not this, you know, Skynet in the system in the corner thing. It's actually something that people can really easily understand. You've got a list of faces and you've got a camera looking for them. It's as simple as that. You know, it's not necessarily connected to some eye in the sky. It's, you know, all the things that it could do. And I think that's quite important, is to get across of what it is doing versus what it could do. And having that trust and respect that you'll limit your use of it based on what you've communicated you're going to use it for. And again, it goes back to that point about, you know, making sure you consider that use case rather than what it's capable of. And I think, you know, technology is, as I said before, advancing at a pace that legislation, understanding, awareness can't keep up with. So you're always having to make sure that you put that effort in. And as I said before, you know, face scan your phone for your own image. You know, all these things are kind of out there in different flavours. It's about normalising it and making sure people understand that, you know, this is the intended use case.
This episode of the Emergency Services Times podcast is sponsored by MSA Safety, proudly supporting emergency services and first responders on the front line. At MSA Safety, protecting first responders isn't just what we do, it's who we are. We work closely with fire and rescue services across the UK to develop and deliver safety solutions designed to meet your ever-evolving needs. That includes MSA Bristol Firefighter PPE, trusted by services across the UK and beyond, shaped through years of collaboration with frontline teams. It also includes our growing investment in innovation and technology, from the connected M1 SCBA modular solution to our agile, fully managed service model that helps keep crews protected and ready to respond. But for us, safety goes beyond equipment. We believe in standing shoulder to shoulder with the people who dedicate their lives to protecting others, whether it's supporting firefighter charities, backing mental health initiatives, or showing up for community events. MSA is proud to be part of the emergency services family. To learn more about our work in the UK and how we're supporting first responders every step of the way, visit www.msasafety.com. With MSA Safety, when you go in, we go in with you.
And what interaction have you had with MSPs in Holyrood about how Police Scotland would like to use this?
None. That's we're very early in our journey. There may be conversations taking place in the sense of, I can't speak for everyone, but we are very, very early in our journey. We are taking a very ethical consideration around it. And as I said, we are very transparent around it.
Mm-hmm. And Leanne, in Devon and Cornwall, you're a police and crime commissioner. What did they say about it?
They are very supportive. I briefed them a few weeks ago, and in fact, it's triggered a regional conversation. Kind of being in the southwest, we're a group of forces, kind of out down on the corner, and we can all see the benefits of it. So actually, we've set up a regional group. We're in the process of briefing all chief constables, all PCCs in relation to that, and the message has been clear in that we are keen to proceed, but that we have to have all our ethical kind of our EIA, DPIA requirements, kind of published documents, standing operating procedures, or everything in place before we start to proceed.
Okay, I would like to get some questions from the floor. If anyone has one, do please stick your hand up and we will get a microphone to come over to you. I'm particularly keen to hear if there's any serving police officers or staff or anyone working with this kit has seen it operationally, whether you have any queries. Lady in the pink.
Hi, I'm not an operational police officer, but I was a police officer in the past. We've been doing some work with the Met around connectivity for live facial recognition. But my question is more around Leanne's specialist area, which is body-worn video. And Andrew, interested in your views as well on this. How do you see, or what would the ideal future look like for you around the bringing together of live facial recognition and body-worn video?
Excellent question. Most cops now have a camera strapped to their chest.
Yes.
How can that integrate with live facial recognition?
Yeah, great question, Charlotte. And this is a really live conversation I've been having only this morning. And this is why I've started getting involved in facial recognition in the first place. My day job is body-worn video. And back around 2 years ago, I got in contact with the MPCC facial recognition team because I think we agreed that there would be some benefit in me being aware of kind of where this technology was going. And that's how I ended up kind of bringing it to Devon and Cornwall by going to their meetings and hearing about all the other forces and going, why aren't we doing this? In relation to body-worn video, that's definitely something I think we acknowledge is coming. I have my kind of reservations about how quickly that might be, because a camera is, every deployment is very specific. Every LFR deployment is very specific and is in a specific location. Cameras on officers can move. They can capture all other people. They can remain on. I always used to forget to turn mine off, and they can remain on, and they can then go into sensitive areas and all other kind of places like that. So it's definitely something that is coming. We'd be mad not to look at it because live facial recognition can come through any live camera feed. And who's best placed to kind of have a live camera feed than the one that an officer is wearing and capturing? there is still a lot of governance in place. And again, that same scrutiny we would apply to the suppliers currently that have the fixed cameras in vans. We would have to ensure that that governance is carried on through the body-worn video suppliers, which hopefully with the help of the national team, we can start those conversations around how we can start bringing that through. And like you said, combining those two technologies, because I think this is just the beginning of that kind of journey.
Andrew, are those conversations you've had?
We've had them from a technical perspective on the basis, as Leanne says, it's something that's obviously possible at some point. But I think, to back up what Leanne says there, I mean, the kind of privacy concerns where those cameras can end up make it a completely different conversation compared to a mobile deployment. I think after the fact analysis is another one in that space where you could in theory run body and video footage through after the fact analysis, but again, the concerns around privacy, etc., because a completely different deployment model they're really important to have.
Okay. Do we have any more questions from the floor? I'm very keen to hear from people who've got experience of this or might have queries about how it's used.
Hello there. I thought Leanne made a really good point that there's a responsibility that comes with collecting facial recognition to protect the data privacy and protect the data. If we look towards the future, it seems likely at some point drones will also become involved in this and will be sending footage over satellite, over cellular. I'd be really interested in Andrew's thoughts as a CDIO of what you will expect to deal with the data responsibly over those links.
Yeah, good question. Again, I think it's just another example of the art of the possible in this space. I think consideration around data sovereignty, data security, privacy has to be there no matter what. We are a connected world now. Every email you send, every communication you have, every file you store. So, particularly around, I suppose, law enforcement, private data, it's got a different level of consideration which has to be demonstrated. So, yeah, really good question. But I think it's something that we can demonstrate pretty much in every deployment of a new capability, consideration around data privacy and sovereignty. And you have to have thought about that as part of your overall design.
Thank you. Gentleman in the grey suit, did you have a question? Bring the microphone to you.
Thank you for this talk. This isn't at all a technical question, but my question is, what's the point of all this wonderful technology? I mean, I come through Birmingham city centre this morning and somebody was swearing at somebody else. Cities have been degrading for years in terms of antisocial behaviour. There's never been so much shop theft. What's the point of all your technology?
Well, there we go. And it is a good question because although you weren't able to give us a price tag, it's not cheap, this kit. And there's an argument that actually just please put more cops on the streets. I mean, I had a journey up from London, didn't see a single police officer at Euston Station, didn't see a single police officer at Birmingham International. Came through the security sweep when I came into the NEC, which was two people, not police officers, who opened my suitcase, didn't look inside a single thing and closed it. Who knows what could have been in there. I currently live in Washington, D.C., where there's police and at the moment the military absolutely everywhere. Shouldn't we, as the gentleman suggests, just be putting more actual human people in place of these machines?
And there is a place for more visible police presence. And along with LFR deployments, they naturally become themselves a visible police deterrent because they are very overt. We're very open about how we're doing it. And they come with a whole host of police officers dressed in bright yellow jackets that attract a lot of community engagement as it is. However, I'll go back to we need the technology because as humans, we can't do it as good. We can't do it as quick. If we look at kind of a cost analysis, some of the suspects that have been identified through live facial recognition have been outstanding for years. Mm-hmm. The cost to the taxpayer about investigating, the cost to the victim around police trust and confidence, justice being bought, say about retail crime. We can't have people on every street corner kind of looking at people coming through. Why would we do that when we can give that job? This is what we're looking at in policing, is all the burdensome heavy lifting We give that job to technology, and then we give police officers what they need to go and do their job much more efficiently. That officer can then do that job more efficiently and be freed up to then be the more visible police presence.
There is a slight paradox, though, because you're tackling these ethical and privacy concerns. As you say, the vans are highly visible, surrounded by cops in uniform. There's signs everywhere, live facial recognition technology in use. In the same way that a person maybe driving without insurance avoids the marked police car, if you're Mr. Baddie walking down the street and you see this, you put the hat on and you take a different street, and actually you kind of shot yourself in the foot.
It is. It's frustrating, and it was a comment from our public community panel that was like, it seems like you are shooting yourself in the foot. And we know that people won't see the signs, will think they will beat the technology. And I know some forces have examples of people walking through repeatedly, and but like I said, we're catching those people that are that maybe aren't thinking it through. Right. I know the national team in South Wales. We're looking now around, and this was all because policing. We wanted to bring this in with this consultation and say, actually, we're going to tell you. We're even going to tell you where we're going to be in advance, so you can even avoid us even more. I'm hoping now we're going down right, we've used this for many, many years. We've done all our testing. Actually, let's start. We're police at the end of the day. We're here to catch the bad people. Some of them are, really bad. And it's if we look at kind of the counter-terrorism world, we want to get these people off our streets quickly. So having this investment is definitely worthwhile.
You mentioned people trying to beat the system. What kinds of things have you seen people do?
I have the technology is brilliant, and I kind of urge, if anyone can see it in action through any of the suppliers, then do, because as it gets better and more accurate, it needs less and less amount of a face to kind of identify to our threshold. We're actually doing a family day in Devon and Cornwall on Saturday, where we will have a demo, and I have all manner of props, masks, funny sunglasses, hats, with the intention to be, come and try and beat our system and see how you get on. And because it will have a limit, it will, and it's designed to be a very fun, engaging kind of experience. But you're right, and there's now full face masks that have different faces on, isn't there, of like famous people and all sorts of stuff. And that's something us as policing and the suppliers will have to kind of take as we move on.
Yeah. Do we have any more questions from anyone who would like to grill Leanne or Andrew about live facial recognition? I have one for you, Andrew. What was the tipping point for you? You will have been watching this technology for a long time. What was it that made you say, okay, now's the moment that Police Scotland needs to start looking at this?
Well, first, it wasn't wholly my decision. I think really it's a case of right time, right place. I think there's an aspect to it around the organisation's own capability and maturity. I think it's important to be in the right space of. I think related technologies, around infrastructure, networks, data privacy, etc. Having those things in place ahead of this has been important as well. So there's an aspect of a relative kind of logical order. But I think also, just go back to the question earlier, there's something about, fundamentally we want technology to allow officers to spend time on the right thing and not on the wrong thing. And, constantly you'll see examples of people making up for poor process and system. And I think technologies like this are good examples of where actually the benefit is that you're going to allow people to spend time on the value add as a human, like as an individual, rather than having to make up for that. And for us, I think, LFR is in that space where there's the benefits both from an efficiency perspective, but also from an effective perspective in regards to driving better outcomes.
We mentioned earlier the groups which are opposed to this and the kind of public pushback that you're getting. Are you getting the opposite? Are there any groups which are urging you to do this faster, do it quicker, apart from the suppliers?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think to answer part at the start, I think a lot of the time people think we already have it, which, is encouraging in one sense, but also sort of depressing in the other sense. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly some of the bigger technologies we've rolled out in Police Scotland across body-worn video, mobile working, etc. Each time we've consulted, I wouldn't quote me on this, but I'm sure over 80% each time thought we already had it. So I suspect with LA Faro it'll be the same.
Leanne?
Yeah, I would agree. And actually, I've been surprised at quite a lot of younger kind of groups. I did one of the first public engagements was with an event for adults or young people with learning disabilities. Probably quite a difficult first engagement, to be honest, as to how you kind of explain it. But and actually, the interaction from younger people, kind of teenagers, we see this in London. Actually, we see our friends, people at school getting involved in gangs, getting involved in county lines, in drugs. We'd love this technology. And this is someone in a village in Cornwall. I've been asked to as soon as we do get any capability, we can showcase and demo certain youth groups in Torbay. So I'm quite reassured that there's our younger generation coming through, as we know, are very technologically aware anyway. Probably think we're doing it anyway, think we're live streaming and doing all this stuff, and we're probably not. So I've been reassured that they're kind of very supportive of the police using this.
You touched on this earlier, both of you actually, that at the moment this is one van, one camera goes up. But as you mentioned, Andrew, you go to cases, a football match, for example, where a stadium's got hundreds of cameras. Is there a world in which you just plug in a laptop and you take all their CCTV feeds and suddenly you've got all their data?
I think technically it's possible, so it could happen, but again, it comes back to that consideration around proportionality, and I think that would be a case-by-case basis. But I think from a technical perspective, a camera, a feed, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say something, if you look at something like the Manchester Arena, actually, if we knew someone had entered that building and we wanted to identify them quickly, would we have a policing purpose to turn that technology on for every camera? Yeah, 100% we would, because we need to save lives. If it was a kind of a town centre for a normal Saturday afternoon shopping, probably not.
Yeah. At the moment, this is facial recognition. Can the system, or will the system in the future, be able to add in additional identification metrics like gait analysis, for example, or clothing recognition?
So there are systems that do that, and from my experience with them, they're more tied in with what we call the retrospective facial recognition. So this is, we have a video or an image already, and we are now analysing it. And we will use things exactly like that: object identification, suspicious objects, behaviour analysis. I know for the protest last year in Plymouth, we suffered quite badly with some violent disorder, and that's how the conversation began in Devon and Cornwall. Was, we have all hours and hours of body-worn video footage, funnily enough. We're paying officers to sit and trawl through them and try and identify people. Surely technology can do this for us. So that was almost reversed. And there were certain objects that were being used and held, and we were like, technology can do this really simply. It can identify certain colours and vehicles and objects. Will it transition to live? I'm sure it will for certain aspects of policing, probably not as a full rollout.
Okay. Do stick your hand up if you have a question, and we'll bring a microphone to you. If I can go back to your community engagement for the moment, where does the journey go from here?
The journey from here is, we've done a series of online kind of webinars. We've done one in-person kind of conference, and that was through our independent community scrutiny panel, who are perfectly placed to kind of hold us to account around our actions. And that involved our deputy chief constable as well. So we have the buy-in from the top executive members to make this work. Where we are now, and my kind of, wasn't a promise, but my aim for them was, I'll stop talking about magical vans and cameras that don't exist, and I will try and get you something to show you. So that's where we're at the moment. And I think once we have that, it will make it so much easier. People will see it. People can test the system. People can upload pictures of themselves. It's all done the vans are completely standalone. So they're not connected to any network. And it just shows people how simple it is to use, how it's all contained in one place, and how you can then instantly remove yourself from that watch list as well.
How often do people stop you in the street and ask you about it?
Not that many, but obviously I'm in a technology space with body or video anyway, so I'm probably more kind of aware to those conversations. In Devon and Cornwall, it's a very new conversation, so it's more kind of just a very kind of curious conversation, but it's been really positive and it's generated a lot of attendance, a lot of engagement, which is great. We've had all kind of engagement across all sectors, some amazing questions. For example, one was from our trans community. It said that had that thought it might have been a description. So actually, if you're putting a description of a male in, and I'm identifying as a female, how does that work? And straight away we can go, no, it's done on an image. It's not done on a subjective kind of physical description of people. So yeah, really kind of encouraged by those. We're inviting those challenges and compiling almost like frequently asked questions, so we can go reach out to our communities and go, I know what you're thinking. Here's the answer, but please, if you think of anything else, let us know.
And Andrew, where does Police Scotland's community engagement journey go from here?
That's very much, part of our process now. I mean, we are very early days. We are considering it right now. We've not committed to anything yet. But that is, as I said before, I've probably over-egged it, but it's just to demonstrate that we are very much in that engagement stage. So it's been built into the process, and we've demonstrated that through previous technology rollouts, that is kind of part of our standard template, for want of a better phrase.
At the moment, police forces are kind of being left to their own devices on this. As we mentioned, you're kind of writing your own rule book and deciding how you do this. Would it be helpful if the Police Chiefs Council just said, right, you know what, we've actually made a decision and here's a national directive UK-wide that we want standardised approach everyone to do? Would that make your jobs easier?
I think national standards would allow us to seek quality as a measure. So I wouldn't say it'd be a bad thing. I wouldn't like to say mandate either. But I certainly think given the use cases out with different environments and communities would be very similar. I think some form of standard would obviously bring with it then a level of best in class, hopefully.
Leanne, would it help you to have some kind of centralised framework?
Yeah, and I would say that we already do. I work in the MPCC anyway, so I lean on our MPCC facial recognition team a lot with questions constantly. And there's also been a kind of national rollout of vans recently for access to all forces. And that's actually triggered the conversation that actually geographically we probably would like our own capability. We would still very much, we would see South Wales and the Met as the standard that we would kind of aspire to be, and follow their direction as much as we could.
Okay, before we wrap up, does anyone have any burning questions?
So you both discussed how you're reviewing the technology at the moment and looking to implement it in the future, and both have referenced how important it's been for the Met in terms of publicising the positive stories they've had to kind of shape public perception. How much responsibility do you think there is on each force when they implement this to follow suit and do the same to kind of reinforce that message? Because I imagine there'll be a prevention angle to this as well. The more you publicise it, the more people look at it and say, this is a threat if I commit these crimes. Policing is becoming more effective. And so people will look to kind of reduce the amount of crimes they might be involved in and prevent future crimes. How much of a responsibility do you think there is on each force to follow suit and kind of band together in terms of pushing that message?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's found to be quite preventative in its nature anyway. I know it's been deployed at Silverstone at the Formula One, and that's been really kind of a great deterrent effect. And they're treating that as a 100% success, because that's just by advertising, going, you might want to come to this event, but we're gonna be using NFR, and if you're identified as a watch list, someone that's going to disrupt public safety, then we're going to prevent you from entering. So you're right, it's got that preventative effect as well as being a kind of reactive on the ground effect. And again, that will be something we'll probably cover in our public consultation. Is what do you want us to would you rather we how much do you want us to release? How much do you want to know about how we're doing it? And that brings that tipping point of, well, how much publicity and notice are we going to give people around where we're using it? And like you said, that tipping point is going to be different for each use case.
Andrew, how closely do you work with the comms team in Police Scotland about the positive messaging around this?
Yeah, hand in hand. I mean, I think, comms and engagement, one's one way, engagement's two way. So I think we very much try and embrace that with every digital innovation transformation. We have members of the comms team built into the project boards and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very important communication in this space, because fundamentally that's how you go from where you are to where you need to be. So
yeah, really interesting, one to watch, no pun intended. Thank you for your company, and please join me in thanking Leanne and Andrew.
Thanks for listening. Remember that by taking time to learn from our speakers, you can earn CPD points from our partner CPDme. So do check out the link in the show notes. Our thanks to MSA Safety for their continued support for our podcast, and to Smart Digital for producing this series. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times.